Hello, and welcome to I Am Not For Everyone, the podcast for those looking to release shame, heal from trauma, and feel really, really good being their fully expressed, authentic selves. My name's Dr. Lee, and I am a doctorally prepared nurse practitioner and a certified clinical trauma professional, as well as a mom, wife, and a human being navigating the world with complex PTSD. Season 1 of this podcast came about because I was tired of spending decades living in a shame-filled, trauma-laden body and brain. And after doing a lot of work and learning how to return to a safe, grounded place in my life, I knew it was time for me to take my experience in education and use my voice to unsilence myself, to release the leftover shame, and to give others permission to do the same. On season 2 of this podcast, I'm going to be sharing my experience in education. But even more importantly, I'm going to be bringing on some incredible guests who are going to unsilence themselves. They're going to share their own stories of trauma, shame, and their journeys to healing, resiliency, and self-acceptance. While I believe these episodes will be deeply impactful, I do want to add a disclaimer that we're going to be talking about some potentially triggering topics. So please take the invitation to pause or skip or fast forward on any episode, and to treat yourself gracefully and kindly after each time that you listen. Let's dive in. Hello, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode. I am so excited. I have the amazing Lara Waldman with me today, and we're going to be talking about a topic that we've been talking about a lot recently, and I'm really excited to hear your take on this, Lara. So can you go ahead and introduce yourself to everyone, please?
Yes, my pleasure. So I'm Lara Waldman, also known as the Abundance Activator. I'm a mum of 2 teenage girls. I live in London, England, but I'm originally from Vancouver, Canada, so I've got the funny old accent there. I am an abundant business mentor, a conscious wealth coach, and the author of Money Manifestation Mastery, and it is my passion to support 6 to 7 figure entrepreneurs, business owners, and professionals to step into the next level of their purpose, power, and prosperity in a way that's truly sustainable.
Oh my gosh, my neurodivergent brain with all of that alliteration, I was getting tingles. I'm like, oh, I love it. It's so good. I also love that, from an abundance activation standpoint, like, oh, that feels so good to hear. So we can just dive right in. I would love to hear your story of experiencing shame and how you started in this space.
Well, it's a long journey and a long story, so I won't share the whole thing because we'll be talking for hours. And I've been doing this. I've been on this path really of sort of self-development, transformational work, looking at my shit essentially for 25 years. And so there's been definitely many different versions of moving through shame over my life. But the interesting piece for me was around money, the money shame. Because what had happened is I didn't realize it really, but I grew up in wealth. I grew up in quite an affluent part of Vancouver, Canada, which I didn't realize that was just my normal. But I went through a lot of trauma and a lot of pain, and a lot of devastation that woke up a lot of things for me. When my mum came out when I was 14. And so there was a lot of having to look at sexuality and identity. We experienced a lot of homophobia, and because we were in this very kind of white, kind of middle upper class area that, there was a lot of shame going on in that first section, including having to look at my own relationship with sexuality and everything around that. But what happened is I got really into spirituality. I started meditating. I was in a lot of pain, physically, emotionally, mentally, physically, a lot of trauma, which again, I didn't realize at the time. But I started meditating and started waking up these gifts I had, this spirituality side of myself. And I got very deep into this whole new way of seeing and perceiving. I became a healer, and I became really into natural health and well-being, and essentially finding a way to just feel okay. And what I hadn't realized was that on my kind of path first of becoming the healer and trying to find ways to heal, and then my passion to help other people heal, I had unconsciously rejected money, and I'd unconsciously kind of rejected the whole physical thing. Like I was very natural, let's just say, at that time in my life. And yeah, so it was all about the heart. It was all about the spirit. It was all about coming home. And that's what I felt was most important. Like I said, because I'd grown up with all the physical things. I'd grown up doing all the things physically, but it was so, for me, it felt really void of love, actually. So it was like money without love felt like shit. So I was like, okay, well, now I found love through this kind of spiritual kind of connection and nature-based way of living that felt like home and it felt like love. But what happened was that I got pregnant unexpectedly with my first daughter, and then had our second daughter 3 years later. And it wasn't really until I had two little ones, and I just remember our house was a total mess, like hanging up endless amounts of laundry. And I just remember these like tiny little socks, like just hanging endless tiny little socks that wouldn't stay on the little hanger thing, and feeling so frustrated and exhausted. We had no money. We were completely broke. And I started to really feel this kind of contraction coming down on us. And I had this sense of this purpose and wanting to make a difference. And I felt completely stuck and limited. And that was the moment, and the first time that I'd even considered talking about money. And I remember collapsing on the sofa, kind of in meditation, sort of crying out to the universe, being like, what is going on with money in this planet? Like, that was my question. And then started to receive, because when I meditate and tune in and ask questions, I receive what I call downloads, and I get all this beautiful information. I started to receive this flood of information around what was possible around money in this planet, and what was available to us around money. And I was like, that is so beautiful. That was so amazing. I was like, kind of really blown away. And so I started this journey kind of being guided. My language is by my higher self to start welcoming money in. And then this is when I just started getting hit by piles and mountains of money shame that I had no idea existed. So I literally, I just didn't even think about money. I didn't even talk about it. It wasn't even a thing. And then at this moment where I got this download of what was available and possible around money, then the journey was to start looking, okay, well, what is in the way? What is stopping me or blocking me from welcoming this beautiful wealth and abundance into my life? And it was so much shame and so much pain. I was completely floored by it, to be honest. So that is the start. That is the start of my, really, I would say, actively working through shame, through the vehicle of money and through the vehicle of working with money manifestation.
Wow. So there are two things that I want to pick and pull out from this that I think are going to be so helpful for our listeners. And one is your story about your mom, right? A lot of times and I see this with some of my clients, where they have to shift their identity and start to look at who they are and what they believe and how they want to show up. And it's not happening from a internal desire to do so, but it happens because it's in response to somebody else that they're close to going through that journey first. Yeah. And so we talk a lot about, your second example of you having that moment where you just had the download and you recognize, like, wow, like this is something I really need to shift. And I think that's how we traditionally think about trauma, is something happens to us personally, and then we decide to go on that hero's journey or go through that dark night of the soul where we really transform and transmute that pain and that shame. And a lot of times it happens in response to somebody else going on that journey first. And so I just wanted to pull that out because I think that that's really powerful, especially at 14.
Yeah, it was a big time. And it's interesting. I haven't actually talked about this on any podcasts before, but around, your sort of your sexual identity starting to develop around that time. Right. So, and there wasn't at that time, there weren't that many options around how you could be sexually. There you were straight, you were gay, or you could be bisexual. That was sort of coming out at that point as well. But it was I felt very binary. And actually it wasn't really how everything was so boxed in. And so sort of having your whole perception of reality shifted, particularly that age means you have to then look at everything and question everything, including myself. And there was a lot of shame for me as a teenager because I started having to look at myself then and my sexuality, and went through, a lot of shame and confusion around that. What does it mean, if I'm gay or if I'm bisexual, or, where I guess the norm was just the assumption that you're straight, for example. And so through, in a way, we were all processing together. My mom and her girlfriend, they had a lot of shame, and she was just coming out. And at the same time, my sisters and I, we were having to process that too. And I'm so grateful for that experience. I'm very proud to have a lesbian mom, because it also made me understand discrimination and what an individual goes through when they're trying to come to terms with who they are, and the pain of that, and also the pain of being rejected by the outside world. And yeah, the shame that happens and what happens when we're in shame, and the sort of for me, I developed a lot of eating disorders. I went through a lot of self-punishment in a lot of ways. It was very dark and very destructive. Eventually, I just came to terms with the fact that I didn't actually want to box myself into anything, but it took me quite a few years to feel at peace with that, and to feel okay with that. But still, that was something I figured out privately and quietly. It wasn't something I felt I could talk about at the time.
Yeah. Wow. I love what you're saying about the box piece, because, one of the ways that we talk about shame is shame really happens when we have a black and white system and we feel like we're in the gray, right? Yeah. And we feel like, okay, I either can pretend to be black or white, right? Or I can actually embrace this gray and know that there's likely going to be some rejection, some abandonment, some negative external judgment around that. And really choosing between those options is hard. So thank you for bringing context to that, because I think that's a really valuable point. The other thing that I pulled out of what you said when we or during your first answer was this idea of spirituality being disconnected from money, right?
Mm-hmm.
I see this a lot with spiritual healers. They're like, oh, I don't need any money. I just want to change the world. And I'm like, how you can change the world really easily is with a lot of money.
Yes.
So can you tell us a little bit more about, you said that money shame starting to hit after that. What did that look like? Figuring out that it's not an either or. I'm not either spiritual and broke, or I am wealthy and greedy, or disconnected from source, or however you'd like to say that.
Or a sellout. That was mine. You're a sellout.
Oh, a sellout. Yes.
Oh my God. I mean, I'm giggling away to myself with what you're saying, because that was fully me. So you can't have money and be spiritual. If you have money, you're a sellout. You're a money whore. You're, greedy. You're kind of this sort of dark shadow of manipulation. So if you're spiritual and if you're a healer, you'll give your services for free. So then if you start charging, you must be bad, essentially. Honestly, I went through years of having to face this story that was so strong. And I realized, oh my God, there's so much judgment in the spiritual community. It's insane. And if there's one thing I am fiercely passionate about deep diving into everything, to be honest, into the shadows. I would call myself a shadow worker. I didn't know. I'd always say, I'm a light worker. I'm bringing the light, and I'm like, you know what I am? I'm a shadow worker, which is to try and identify the shadow within everything. And within the spiritual community, there's a lot of judgment. There's a lot of superiority. There's a lot of we're like the higher, the sort of, we're the seers of the truth. And I was kind of in that, to be honest. I call it spiritual ego. And it was only because of my guidance, my inner guidance, that I learned to trust, that was showing me there's another way. And my guidance came in and said to me, Lara, we need to help get money in the hands of heart-centered women, heart-centered people. We need more people who are heart-led to be bringing money in to actually help to transform the current financial system. And actually, by you being all spiritual and on the clouds, you need to get grounded. You need to you need to play the game to change the game, is what my guidance said to me. And I was like, ah! It was I didn't know how I don't want to play that game. So it was a long journey of really having to embrace. Well, honestly, it's been many, many years of moving through many, many shame mountains. But I would say the main thing is, I'm a money whore. Like this story, or I'm a sellout, or I'm not really spiritual. So I'm sort of, that you're greedy, you're bad, like fundamentally bad.
I think this is fascinating too, because a lot of times, and this isn't for everyone, I'm just going to disclaim this as a generalization, but a lot of times people who have disconnected from religion and gone more towards the spiritual sense, right? Or using that as the definition for how they're connecting. I see a big similarity between those two groups, because both a lot of times are money equals greed, right? Money equals greed, being poor and pious, being, disconnected from all material needs, all of these things. It's a thread that runs through both. And I think it's fascinating because when we look at even where that's come from, it's so patriarchal and puritanical. And I say this to my clients a lot. I'm like, the idea that money is bad from a spiritual or religious standpoint, that happened around 300 to 400 AD. That isn't something that's been through the ages that people have said, oh no, money's always bad. Like, money was seen as a really great way to support others and to enact change, like you're talking about, and to really be able to deepen into the work that, and the purpose and the passion that you're here for, that your soul is here on the planet for, because you're not worrying about where is my next meal coming from. You're not worrying about, oh my goodness, I'm working 100 hours a week, 80, 100 hours a week to try to just make sure my family is taken care of. And so I love what you're saying here, because I think that this is something that a lot of people experience. I experienced this as well. When I started getting, the only way that I felt comfortable getting paid at a high level was to work very, very hard. Did you have that same thing?
Well, that's been one of the things I've had to really unhook myself from and that's one of the money beliefs. So I work a lot with all the money. That's a classic money belief, that many of my clients have, which is, you have to be hard. You have to work hard to get money. Mm-hmm. Now, the problem was that my body couldn't do that because I experienced burnout quite young in my 20s. So I couldn't work hard. So my whole inner guidance system, the work that I facilitate, is how do we do this in a way that's actually supportive, right? So I couldn't do the hard work thing. If I tried, I'd frazzle and burn out. So, but I definitely had it as a belief, and most of my clients will meet that as well. It's well, if I want money, I'm going to have to work really hard, and I don't want to. So they kind of block their money flows from that belief system. So,
yeah, that has to be a hard belief to have. You put yourself between a rock and a hard place, right? Because if the belief is I have to work hard to earn money, and also I can't work hard because when I do, my body and my mind don't respond well to that. It's oh, well, okay, I guess I'm not making money.
Yep. Yeah.
What specific steps did you take to, once you realized, wow, I've got a lot of these limiting beliefs, there's a lot of shame and shit and just stuff coming up around the idea of being a sellout, the idea of being a money whore. What steps did you take to kind of release and heal from that? How did you move forward?
Well, these 5 steps I wrote about in my book, Money Manifestation Mastery, it was a process that I was sort of led through, like I said, from this inner guidance wisdom. I call it my wealthy wisdom, that I believe we all have. We just need to tap into it a little bit. And my first step is to relax. So when we're in the face of, let's say, I want money, but then the shame, it's our whole nervous system reacts. So we kind of go into fight, flight, freeze mode. The sort of trauma responses start kicking off. So the first thing is to relax, which is easier said than done sometimes. And so we need to just start breathing finding a way to relax your whole nervous system. This is step 1. You want to be looking at trying to create a little bit of space between kind of what you want and what you're thinking. So I like to call this like, let's get curious. Like, let's not assume anything, but let's get curious and look at what are the money blocks, or what are your beliefs about this? Because the problem is, right, is our beliefs, they feel real, don't they? They feel so real. Like when we're in a shame shit show, it's like, it just feels like it's the truth. So when we're in that step one, relax, where we want to create just some space to breathe, like just a little bit of space, like let's be the witness, let's be the observer. So I'm a big fan of meditation for that. Not everyone gets on with meditation. So it's like, just create some space. Let's journal and identify what some of these beliefs are. And then just start to create a little bit of separation. You know, we may not know what the truth is, like if there even is a truth, but it's maybe understanding that, that might be some of the old patterns, programs, conditions that are based on wounded stories when it comes to money. So it's like, let's just stay curious, open to the possibility. Maybe this isn't the truth. And then my step 2 is release. So we want to create space to release the blocks and barriers to money, which is partly, and we carry a lot of trauma when it comes to money, especially women and, BIPOC community as well. Like, and anyone who hasn't been sort of within that kind of mainstream system is going to have a lot of wounding and pain to sift through to reclaim, because a lot of this is around reclaiming our power, right? Where the current financial system's kind of disempowered. So we need to understand that when your step 2 releases these money blocks is very, very deep stuff. So doing money work is very powerful work. It's very deep and powerful work. So we want to, so identify this, just start to create some space to release. The very cool thing that I learned from being a healer for many years is that when we are held in a safe space and we start to relax, our body will naturally bring itself into balance. So we want to create space to release, a safe space to do the releasing work and the letting go, and letting the old wounded stories kind of dissolve, transform through the nervous system. And from there, when we feel safe and relaxed, we'll be more open and receptive. And so that my step 3 is to receive, where we start to receive. And we want to, the practice is to kind of, you can see or imagine breathing money into your body. Like, how much can you receive this money that you're wanting? What is your capacity to receive? And this is the fascinating thing, is that a lot of us, we don't know how to receive.
Yeah.
And especially, probably everyone on some degree, but if we have those like very deep beliefs, like there's something bad and shameful about you, there's something unlovable around you, fundamentally wrong about you, what happens is we create unconscious barriers. Like there's these walls that push out the very thing that we want. So part of this money work is learning how to receive, which is also very deep work, like that I am lovable, I am worthy, I'm deserving, right, of money and all the things. Money is just a portal for me to all the things, everything we truly desire. Yeah, and so we're starting to open up to receive. So there's my first 3 steps. I'll just stop there for a minute and let that land.
Oh, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. You're talking about nervous system regulation, right? You're talking about some really, I love, you're talking about this in such a natural way. There's some really high level concepts in here of the nervous system regulation, of metacognition, right? Which is thinking about your own thinking. We as humans are as we know, the only species on the planet that can think about their own thinking, that can look at themselves from that observer viewpoint and go, is this truth my truth, or is this someone else's truth that was taught to me, programmed in, and this isn't really something I want to think anymore. And so I love that you follow that up with the release step, which is so important for the body, right? Not just for the brain, but for the body, because the body has been subjected to those beliefs for a very long time and has been acting as such. So to give it the space to kind of recalibrate and show up in a different way and let those things go is so important and so beautiful.
Dude, I love that recap. That's great. Yeah.
And then the receiving piece too, I think is huge, right? There are a lot of people that I come into contact with who can bring money in through their business. And then once it's there, the nervous system dysregulation is very jacked up, right? It's okay, well, do I need to then squirrel this away because I've been taught that you have to save everything for a rainy day? Do I need to, as this money comes in, send it right back out because I don't feel comfortable having it and holding on to it and trusting that I'm going to do the right thing with it? And so being able to look at your receiving patterns is so important, because we don't want to just get money. We want to keep money. We want to grow that financial basis that we have. And so if you can't have and hold, you're going to have a hard time.
Yeah. And that actually, this area you're talking about now is what I'm most passionate about supporting my clients with at the minute, because you can be very good at, like I said, bringing it in, but it's like, there's like a crash that happens if we can't hold it. So I talk about expanding your capacity to hold. Mm-hmm. It's expanding your capacity to receive. I call it rewire to receive. So rewire your whole system to receive. But then when you receive, expanding your capacity to hold it. And that's practical, right? So some of the practical financial systems, it's not my area of expertise, but it's like, can you actually hold it and have it? And I learned this the hard way, because I became very good at manifesting money eventually, and I just would get rid of it. Mm-hmm. I couldn't keep it. And I've noticed this, that actually sometimes it's the most confronting thing when we actually start to get what we want. And so then it's like, okay, we need to teach our body, calm our nervous system, that I am safe with this. And, and we start on a new journey of learning how to look after money practically, right? But it's also like, I just find this so fascinating that when there's something that lands into our life that we have not experienced before, it can feel very dangerous and very threatening to our ego. So it can be, even if it's like the most beautiful thing, like love, like your dream relationship, or like, that money, that 10 grand or like 100 grand or whatever, it can actually feel immensely threatening. So our whole system just freaks out. And that's usually when we find we're destroying things unconsciously that we actually want. So we're now on a new journey of learning to have and to hold, to nourish, to look after, which is that's just that next level, right, of our relationship with money. But it's profound. It's profound work, isn't it?
Yes. You are reminding me of one of my favorite books, The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks. See, you've read it too. I love how he talks about the upper limit problem, right? And he uses the example of a thermostat. So, depending on what you've gone through in your life, some people have thermostats for money that are set at like a very comfortable 68, 72 degrees. Others of us, the room is frigid. It's freezing, where our thermostat is set at 40. And so for some of us, if $10,000 takes us to the temp of 72, well, for those of us who our thermostats are at 72, we can hold that. We can say, yep, I have the capacity for that. I don't have to change my temperature or regulate around this. I'm already regulated. But for somebody whose thermostat is set at 40, maybe from money trauma or from significant emotional abuse or wounding when they were a child, that is going to feel profoundly uncomfortable, right? If you're used to 40 and somebody almost doubles the temperature on you, your body's going to go, whoa, 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 let's bring that back down. And so if you expand the capacity, AKA raise the thermostat temperature gradually and gently so you can get used to it, then you can start to receive these amounts of money that take you up to 73, 75, and you can hold that and recalibrate to that. So I think, and this isn't just with money, right? Like you just said, this is with love. This is with success. This is with visibility. This is with all sorts of different places where we have wounds in our lives. And money is, I would say, the one that I see come up most commonly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so I'd love to hear the last two steps if you're willing to share them, or do we need to just go buy your book?
Yeah, so I'm happy to share the next step. The next step is rhythm, which has two parts. So part one is basically embodiment. So basically it's a practice of embodying the amount of money that you're calling in, which is essentially that this amount of money is calling you in. It's like an activator into waking up an aspect of yourself that, guess what, has been buried in the shadows of shame, right? So money and shame, it's fascinating. So we have to go and reclaim. It's like reclaiming a part of ourselves that we cut off from, disconnected from, separated from a long time ago. And just to say that this can also be through ancestral trauma, like generational trauma, right? So it's not just from what you experience. Yes, everything you experience, and then some sometimes. So we are coming back into the body. We need to, and this again, if we think about the nervous system, it's like when we feel safe, calm, and relaxed, we'll be sitting beautifully in our body. And we can use money as an activator. So we want to bring that, call it the wealth frequency of the amount of money you're calling in, and teach your body how to become a vibrational match to that amount of money. But essentially what we're doing is we're using that practice of embodying money and the amount of money that you're calling in, like I said, to wake up that next level, what I call your purpose or your power and your true prosperity. So it's you that's always been there. It's just bringing her into the body and eventually bringing her out into the world, which is where we hit again on some of the visibility stuff that comes up, right? And then the next part 2 of that is aligned action. So when we are, we're relaxed, we've released our money blocks, we've opened up to receive, we are in the body, in that vibrational frequency of wealth, we then want to tune in from that place of wholeness, alignment, abundance, connection, tuned into aligned action. What action do I need to take to welcome in that next level of money or next level of wealth into my life? And I say aligned action because often we're making choices from fear, from lack, from scarcity, from not enough. And that's our go-to default. So we want to be like, if I was enough, and if it was enough, and there was enough, right? If the money was already here, what would you choose? What action would you take? So you want to be taking action almost as if that money is there already. And so that's aligned action. And then step 5 is to repeat. So it's a daily practice, right? Ideally, from my experience, it's like going to the gym, right? Getting fit, going to the money gym about 4 times a week minimum, 3 to 4 times a week minimum, to keep doing this practice, because it's a practice of, stepping, like you were saying, like slowly building up the heat, right? Mm-hmm. And we need to practice and to keep teaching your nervous system, rewire your whole system to receive, to feel safe, be able to embody this amount of money and the version of yourself that's going to be in leadership of that money.
You just made me think of whenever I come to my coach and I'm like very dysregulated, or I'm like, this isn't working and I want to quit and I'm done. And I just, and one of the first things she'll ask me is, have you been doing your mindset work? And I'm like, okay, never mind. I'll be back. And thankfully, after the last several years of working with her and just being on my own journey, that happens much less often because I am way more consistent. I go to the mindset gym and to the money gym. And I think that this is also, it's interesting because there's another layer of shame here for a lot of people around this, which is the consistency piece, right? Yeah. It's I've never been consistent with this before. So what's the difference now? And so I like how your 5-step system actually addresses that, because you talk about, okay, well, if you call in the consistent version of yourself, right, which lives inside of you, what would it look like to act from that place of consistency? What would it look like to take action as a human who does have evidence that they're consistent? And one of the things that I always like to use, which is a little bit of a mind hack, is if I've been very inconsistent at things for a while, that's actually a form of consistency. And so I say, if you've been inconsistent for a long time, you're actually a very consistent person. You're just you're just consistent at being inconsistent. So we have evidence you can be consistent at something. Now we're just going to create a space where you are consistent at being consistent instead of consistent at being inconsistent. And I think that's it's a nice way to kind of take the shame off of that, right?
Definitely. And also you mentioned being neurodivergent as well. It's like there's certain, if you're like ADHD, for example, I think you could say ADD in the States, like that's hard, right? So it's kind of working with your strengths and also working with your weaknesses in terms of being consistent and finding a way to do that in a way that works for you, rather than, again, this sort of outside idea of what that looks like, So yeah, rather than just being hard on yourself or beating yourself up or like, why can't I do this? It's like, okay, one of my favorite questions is, what support do you need to be able to do this. Because this idea, again, I think this sort of from the patriarchy, where we thought we're supposed to do this alone, and we're a failure if we can't just figure it out. Why everyone else can do it, why can't I? La 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 la. So my favorite question is, who or what can support me with this? Like, what do I need? And sometimes I like to see it as like, it's like being like disabled, actually. Like like if someone was missing a leg, you wouldn't expect them to sprint, it's like, we have to build up this sort of strength and build up resilience, build up skills. So it's like, it's okay if you need handholding. It's okay if you need support. There's some things that have been, part of my shame was like, why can't I do this? Why can't my guidance is telling me X, Y, Z. I'm supposed to take aligned action and be consistent. And I really, really struggled. So it's like, okay, what support do you need? And just not expect yourself to be able to do it by yourself, because I don't believe we're meant to do this alone. I don't think we're supposed to. I don't think it's possible either. So it's like, who can support? What support do you need to be able to be consistent, to show up for yourself, to kind of stay committed to this work? Because, I'm sure you've seen this too, is that what usually happens is just when we're on the brink of quite powerful change is usually the minute we want to bail.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
And it gets super scary. So it's like, we need to have systems in place, support structures and systems in place to hold us. That's what's great about coaches or whatever. But so that was my last bit, is just like, what support do you need to be able to show up consistently and to be able to keep doing this, because it's not easy. It's hard to do it alone.
Absolutely. And I think that what you're saying too is fascinating to me, because I actually did a TikTok on this the other day. I don't know at what point we decided, and I'm guessing it's some point during the Industrial Revolution, right? Where we moved from this more communal based living to nuclear families, separated. We were missing the multi-generational home now, right? Or the, just the communal way. We went from, okay, in this community, this person is the baker, right? They bake. And then everything else they don't do. They get support getting all of those things, right? They don't also go and butcher their meat. They don't also do this. They don't also do that. They have a specific role in that community. And then everyone has that role and has their own role in that community. And they all support one another outside of their particular roles. And now, especially as women, and with the relatively newer standard that most women work, right? Especially in the United States, I'll say. Most women work. Most houses that have partnerships are dual income households. And so all of a sudden, you are trying to manage the finances, and you're also taking care of the kids, and you're also going to your job or running your business. There's all these things. And we go, okay, well, if I can't do all of those really well myself, there's something wrong with me. And especially when you add in the neurodivergence piece on top of that, I also can't do it like everyone else does it. So there's something really wrong with me, right? And I think one of the biggest shifts in my business was when I started saying, you know what, anything that I'm mediocre or below at, somebody else does. And it was really hard to also take those financial steps, right? To hire someone and say, oh my gosh, am I really going to pay somebody to clean my house? I know how to do that. Am I really going to pay somebody for meal delivery? I know how to cook. And when I really stopped and thought about it, it was like, no, I'm not a great cook. I don't like doing it. My kids don't like eating what I make half the time. And I can clean my house, but my body doesn't like it when I clean my house. It makes it harder for me to then get out of bed the next day because of my own chronic issues. And so I love what you're saying here, is just the idea that, you can get rid of this false belief that is not, it's just simply not true, that we are supposed to do everything ourselves, and everything that we do, we're supposed to be great at.
Yes. Yes. Amazing. I love that you've gotten all that support for yourself. It took me ages as well to realize, maybe it's not, there's something wrong with me. That's bad. It's just, this is what I need. If I'm going to do this, which I guess the thing that drove me through it was the sense of purpose. And I was like, I need to figure out how to do this. we're like, oh, you're not supposed to do it all alone.
I know, it's this profound moment. I had a money coach, Eleanor Prisco, who's been on a previous episode, and I still remember the day that she said, Lee, you are allowed to be mediocre with money and hire people who are excellent with it that you trust.
Mm.
And that was such a powerful day for me, because that made it so much easier for me to interact with my money. Because if I didn't understand something, or I was confused, or I was like, I'm not sure what to do here, I had support to go say, hey, this is what I'm thinking. Am I totally wrong? Does this make sense? And I could release the shame around asking, because it was an empowered choice. I was choosing to trust people to help me, instead of feeling like, well, I don't know how to do this and that's wrong, so I don't want to ask anybody for help because I'm going to be embarrassed.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. 100%. There's a lot of humility in allowing for support. You have to be humble, you have to be vulnerable and say, you know what, I don't know how to do this. But no one is taught. We're not taught how to be with money. We're not taught how to manage money. So there is nothing wrong with you if you struggle with managing money, because they're not skills we've been taught. So brilliant. I'm so glad you've worked through that. And I hope others listening are inspired to also say, you know what, I need help. And I've learned all of this the hard way. You know, it was like not until I was sort of collapsing that I couldn't, actually the last round, was when I got my best friend died suddenly, and then we got COVID, and then we had something called long COVID, which is like this post-viral. So I was going through grief and really ill health, and I just could not do it. So I'd already invested in my business, but then I had to invest in more help that I never would have done, because the financial, it's that sort of catch-22 around making a financial investment. And I did because I had to. My business had its best year I ever had after that, while in a mess with grief and while really, really struggling health-wise, because I didn't do it all. I just showed up to the thing that I'm good at, and I outsourced everything else. And guess what? Business finances skyrocketed. So, and again, like I say, I learned that the hard way, but it's also, okay, this is how it works. This is how it works. We experience success when we let ourselves be supported.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes. I resonate so much with what you're saying, where I think you almost have this moment too, once you've done that, where you're like, why did I make that so hard for so long? So I want to bring just some awareness to that, in case anyone's listening to this and you're having an aha moment around support and you're going, why have I made it hard for so long? Because that's how the system has designed you to think about it. So it's not, again, this isn't a place where we learn something and then we shame ourselves for not knowing it before, right? I think that that's a place that people can get stuck. And, just first of all, witnessing you about your friend and everything you went through. I know that a lot of our listeners have had similar experiences this year of loss and grief and uncertainty and overwhelm, and just this moment where you think, I can't keep doing things like this. Like it's not physically possible for me to keep doing things like this. So what gets to change? And I love that the change you made was support. So I say this a lot, but I feel like we could keep talking about this for a very long time. I would love to know, what is one piece of advice that you would give our listeners who may be in a similar situation to where you were before, when you were hanging up the tiny socks, collapsing on the couch and going like, oh my goodness, like this is not working.
Yes. Well, so much love and compassion. First, bringing in lots and lots of love and compassion. So there's a few steps, but the first thing we need to do is actually, it's so simple. My steps are so simple. And sometimes simplicity. I mean, usually when we're in alignment with abundance and alignment with what it is we want, there is simplicity, right? When we go into overwhelm and fear and anger and frustration, we create a lot of chaos. So we want to create a space to slow down, right? And so I call it create sacred space, but it's that space to relax. We need to create some space to be with yourself, to sit and to breathe. So that's step one. So that could look like having time on your own. Like I know for me, being a mom, it was very hard to find space. And I felt a lot of guilt around needing space, right? So it's like making space, carving out space for yourself, putting yourself first is so, so important. And then spending a bit of time, just give yourself some time to process, to slow down that nervous system regulation in whatever way. Maybe it's nature, maybe it's singing, maybe it's dance, maybe it's movement, maybe it's exercise. Spending some time journaling out everything, just like brain dump it out. And then what you want to do, which can be a challenge, is to really get clear on what you want. Because our brain focuses on what's not working. We go into victim consciousness and we feel helpless and we can't see a way through from that place. Once we calm down a bit, we want to get really clear on what it is you want. What are you calling in? And then from that place, we want to start. I would invite you into the steps I shared with the money manifestation practice. It's not necessarily going to turn things around overnight instantly, although I do have so many beautiful testimonials of people having kind of magical money manifestation simply with the shift of their energy, and but going back into those steps and making a commitment to go through and spending some time working on your money story, working on some of those habits and patterns, starting to call in what you want. So that receiving is really like, what do I want? Let's release anything in the way of that and start to call it in. And we start taking that aligned action one baby step at a time. So it can seem overwhelming or daunting, right? I think humans have a tendency of pain avoidance. We have this sort of protection mechanism that kicks in that makes us want to, avoid feeling pain. What I would say is pain is a portal to prosperity. If we can work with it really consciously and make sure you're really well held through it, having someone who has worked through a lot of trauma to get here, right? We need to be held and supported to go through the thing that we don't want to look at, right? We don't want to look at our mess. We've got to go in and look at it. So I'd say as well, be brave, be willing to look at your shit so you can start to clean it up.
That is so good. I just keep having all these book references pop up. So I am rereading Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich for the 4th time. It's one of my absolute favorite money books. I'm also super excited to check out yours. And in there, he talks about every negative occurrence that happens in your life has a seed of equivalent benefit in it. And we oftentimes, when we get in these places where, like you said, where we're just feeling like all we can see is what we don't want, I think your advice here to flip that. Okay, so if you brain dump out everything that you don't want, what does the opposite of that look like, right? Because I have a lot of people say, well, I don't know what I want. I'm like, okay, well, what don't you want?
Yeah.
And then how would you reframe that as the opposite? So if you don't want to feel exhausted all the time, what does the opposite of that look like? And then going through your steps, I think is beautiful, especially then the aligned action piece of, okay, if I was going to feel rested and rejuvenated and excited and vibrant all of the time, the opposite of overwhelmed and exhausted, what would I be doing? What would I be doing towards money? So I think that is gorgeous. And I would love to know where we can get your book, where our listeners can connect with you, because I know there's going to be a lot of people listening to this that are going to want to go read that immediately.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you. So you can go to my website, larawaldman.com, and my book's on there, but you can also get it on Amazon. So if you just put in Money Manifestation Mastery, it's on Amazon, you can get it there. It's probably the fastest, easiest way. And I'm on a few different social media platforms. So I have a YouTube channel. If you put in Lara Waldman, Abundance Activator, I post a new video each week. I got a lot of powerful free resources there. It's my passion to give out, as much free supportive stuff as possible. I'm on Instagram, Lara Waldman Official, Facebook, LinkedIn. So you can come and message me and connect with me in any of those places.
Perfect. What's your favorite social? Do you have a favorite between LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook?
I would say I love making videos, which, by the way, used to be my greatest fear ever. I had the biggest visibility fears, by the way. So now it's like amazing that I just love showing up and being on camera after all that. But YouTube and Instagram, I'd say, is really what I like the most.
Beautiful. Okay, thank you. All right. Well, we'll be sure to grab the book on Amazon. Gotta love Amazon these days, right? And we can come check out YouTube. And thank you so much, Lara, for being on here with us. I really appreciate it. You've given us such great insight and such a great system to move forward from that place of feeling the lack and the scarcity and the shame and the fear to abundance. So much appreciated.
Well, it's my greatest pleasure. Thank you so much for having me on.
Absolutely. All right, everyone. We will see you next week. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. If you're interested in learning more about how you can help yourself and others release shame, heal from trauma, and create healthier, safer, more mutually beneficial relationships, I want to invite you to head to our website, institutefortrauma.com. At institutefortrauma.com, you'll find free resources, be able to connect to our free online community, and view our courses and trainings, including our foundational trauma-informed, psychologically safe certification, aka the TRIP certification. Head to institutefortrauma.com today to learn more.